ideas, and so that was really nice to see that there's a lot of support there, and so hopefully that will be something that I can continue working on throughout the summer and planning different events and ways of making CFSG more visible on campus right at the beginning when you're exposing it to like 1,000 students. And then I guess the other thing that I've been working on a lot is service learning, and it's been going really well. Coming up with like new placements, but also setting a lot of guidelines for expectations for supervision and I guess just anything else around service learning, because in the past there have been problems with kind of expectations not meeting up with placements, and so I want to make sure that they can maximize their usefulness to both the students and the CFSG. So just been working on creating those guidelines.
How long do you think this will take?
Awesome, really important, and probably a good follow-up to our applied student research call and service learning calls. So if you have any thoughts, those guidelines would be really interesting to see. Awesome. All right, Jamie.
Again, I'm Jamie. I'm from Capilano University. I just started, so I don't really have anything to report on yet, but things are looking good.
Great. And then Jada.
Hi, I'm from Halifax. I'm working at Dalhousie University. Right now we're focusing on orientation week and getting local food at orientation week, as well as finding a home for CFSG, perhaps in our Dalhousie Sustainability Office. So I'm working on writing that proposal, as well as perhaps starting a food committee on our council, which would be pretty exciting.
Awesome. Great. Sounds like 2 orientation week events possible at St. FX and Dallas, so some good crossover there. Awesome. And Chris, are you unmuted or able to unmute, or will you just be listening? Oh, potentially just listening in. Okay, if you're able to hop on, feel free to. But just to give you guys a little bit of context, Chris is from Carleton University, doing his PhD, might almost be finished, and was just in Cairo over the winter doing research on food security. Okay. Oh no. Hop in. And so I'll let him introduce himself, but really focused on engaged community engagement with the university, working on the Suffice project, and has helped do a lot of survey and lots of service learning and applied student research. So happy he's joining in. So I thought today we could just do a couple of things. One, just to start off before anyone hops off, is a little bit of housekeeping with information on the summit and trains and just a couple of things on that. And then we'll go into a little bit of a talk on the infographic that we have, and finally. And then finally, we will talk about purchasing baselines and how to track information with purchasing. So, and then we can bring up any other business. But is there anything else that's calling to you guys right now that would be useful to talk over? Okay. So, first bit, if we can do a thumbs up about who is able to come to the summit, who will be coming to the National Student Food Summit.
But she's our natural capital intern.
And maybe Rebecca. Okay, Sarah Jane, right? Okay. Okay, and then who has, who is taking the train across?
Yeah. Train buddies.
Train buddies. Okay, sweet. Oh, these girls are definitely taking the train. And you guys have all, I think, Jamie, I'm just waiting for your information for the training. So I'll pass along that information after. But I think everyone else is doing great. So Sarah Jane, you can plug your ears, but the summit's going to be awesome. We're really excited. We've got all of our speakers confirmed, but we're also creating a lot of space for discussion, as well as we're going to have a yoga session. We're going to go on hikes for those who want. But there's also, we're doing a bit of a community kitchen with a chef. So it'll be a really cool time, but also one of the things that we really want to provide for the summit is a time for you to set up any of your goals or projects and take it as a time to kind of prep for the year. So definitely for those of you working with Canada Summer Jobs, save some of your hours for the summit, and we really hope you can kind of dive in and enjoy. So I guess that is basically the only bit of housekeeping. Other than that, we definitely encourage fundraising if possible, and we've sent along fundraising letters. But if you're having trouble or there's some challenges, definitely get in touch, because Caitlin and I have set aside bits of the different budget pieces to make sure that you can all be there. But it just allows different programming. So get in touch and don't worry if that's the case, but we can talk that over. Awesome. Okay, so I've just on the Google Drive here have uploaded an image, and actually Celia was involved in this image. But can everyone see it? Anyone having trouble? So I think I have to do something with it. I have to share it. Give access. There we go. Let's see. Share settings. I want to give you all access. Yes, I can. Let's see here. So it's here as well. Anyone with a link? Okay, good. Sorry about this. Anyone change? Perfect. Okay, so it's also going to be in the chat box. Yeah.
Sorry, once I've clicked on the Google Drive thing, how do I get off it?
Oh, you re-click it.
Oh, I just re-click. Okay, and then.
No worries.
Oh, okay, you did this one. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah. So it's now in a chat bin, and I'm so sorry. I don't know why it's not appearing here. I'm trying to give you all access, but it seems. Oh, there we go. Now it's worked. So it should be in the Google Drive or in the chat bin, but this is something that you might have seen before, which is the infographic for what we've seen for the campus food system. So this was developed with a few coordinators and a graphic designer. And basically what it is a holistic, as much as possible, vision of what the campus food system is and can be. And what it was conceived as is a tool to help you guys visualize the food system, track a bunch of data, and connect with your campuses and connect with your stakeholders. Something we heard from a lot of administrators or chefs is they didn't really understand the full picture of what the CFSG coordinators help to coordinate. And so this was an idea of these are some of the topics that you guys are involved with and helping to promote. So we would love if, and this isn't a requirement by any means, but if this would be a useful tool for you, it would definitely be a useful tool for us to have you think through some of these numbers. And we really, really recognize that maybe you haven't been involved with a campus kitchen or haven't been involved with a food bank, so it's not like how well are you doing. It's just an understanding of what is happening on different campuses to be able to give a snapshot. So this is an example from Vancouver Island University. I'm sure some of the numbers have changed since, but we have like a spreadsheet for you guys to fill out information. So something like how many students have been involved in applied student research, how many farmers markets have been started, how many days, how many vendors. And you guys, a few of you were speaking about funding on campus or finding a campus home. We really hope that this can be a useful tool to show the utility and the importance of your work on campus and what you're really facilitating. So I just kind of wanted to flag this as something that is a tool, and basically what we're hoping with it is for you guys to connect with us if you're interested in using it, and then we can figure out the best format to fill out. We can like pass along the Excel spreadsheet to fill out this information, and then either we can, or with our graphic designer, adjust it for your campus and sort of decide what's best. So how does that sound? Is anyone seeing like any huge gaps, or is this feeling like if this is totally not useful and you don't think you'll touch it? Any thoughts, temperature check on that? Okay, all right. Tori saying yes, Mel's maybe, SJ maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how I would use it necessarily.
He's a little over the numbers.
Yeah. Totally. So it's definitely overwhelming when it's broken down into the different like boxes on the Excel spreadsheet. It seems a little easier, I find. And I guess in terms of how you would use it, is it in terms of like how to collect the data, or how you would show it after it's all collected?
Yeah, like who would this be best? Like who would I show, and how would I show it?
Right.
I could see it being really useful on like an orientation week on a big poster, but it's not really feasible to print this on a poster. That'd be really expensive. So I'm just
Totally. So yeah, and I really hear that. So I guess a couple of things. One is, one way we were seeing it being useful is, for example, where there's gaps. Like let's say, and we're going to get into this a bit more, is trying to figure out where food's coming from, or how many dollars you're actually buying, your campus is actually buying local. One of the things that was identified by a couple of food services is that they want to see what else is going on campus, as sort of like an instigator for like, okay, we'll contribute to this piece of the puzzle. Sort of, so that was one of the reasons. Okay. But yeah, in terms of, hopefully we want to get it on the website so it can be something that individuals can kind of read, and then we'd love to eventually get it into something that's a bit more interactive. And then the other thing is, we did print it on a big piece of paper, well, a fairly big piece of paper for a conference, and it was about $20. And that's something that we could help support. So it's even in color. So it's not terribly expensive, but it's and it's something, yeah, we could definitely help support for this at the summit and that sort of stuff. But anyway, it's just a tool. Wanted to throw it out there. I'm a big visual learner, as most of you know, so that's really helpful for me. But I like this is a tool for everyone. So wanting to just put it out there, get some feelers. Jamie, it might be an interesting thing as you're sort of jumping in to see all the different areas that you could be working on, and circling like that is like too much, let's focus on this one, sort of just a visual representation of what you could be doing. So just wanted to put it out there. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay. Hey, David.
Hi.
Awesome. Okay, so we're jumping into, we did a little bit of housekeeping, talked about a very confusing document and are jumping into the real heart of the conversation. So maybe if you want to just introduce yourself to this wonderful group of coordinators.
Okay. I'm David. I'm from McMaster University. I'm the meal exchange coordinator for the summer. Hopefully next year.
Absolutely. And David's working on actually, this is going to be interesting. The cafe that he's working with has said that they're able to purchase 85% local in season, and is working with the fresh food bin, and what's the market? Mac Market?
It's called British Cafe,
British Cafe.
And then there's a Mac Farm stand that we're working with to try and promote local food by farmers in Ontario for summer. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so put the infographic aside, the summit aside, and we're going to jump into the understanding of where food is coming from and how it's produced and how to ask those questions. So how many of you had a chance to watch that video I posted? It was last minute, but okay, awesome. I thought it was kind of funny, but I think it's really true. Basically, it was about how the branding natural actually has no certification or standards, and it was sort of a parody of advertisers just pasting natural on everything. And I know that greenwashing can be a bit of an issue and can be confusing for students and can sort of lead to either apathy or just confusion. And so wanted to chat a little bit with you guys about supply chain and purchasing baseline assessments. And I know most of you are working on a lot more of the cultural aspects of food systems and a lot of the more project focused, but just wanted to bring out this tool, which could be used now or down the way, about purchasing. So the Campus Food Systems Project got started because of the need our funders saw for having universities buy more local sustainable food. That is our one goal. That is the line on our funder project goal and outcome, is buying more local sustainable food. And basically over the past 3 years, what we've seen is that there needs to be a lot more cultural change and a lot more demand and a lot more conversation and knowledge about this food before institutions will actually start buying it. But something we've also discovered is that a lot of institutions are already buying food. They just have never assessed where the importance of the local food, the percentage of the local food, or is that local food sustainable, or are they buying food with different certifications? So this is something that Rebecca is going to be working on. Rebecca, if you just want to wave, which is kind of exciting, and I think a model that we can look to. But basically, in setting up, so this concept is a purchasing baseline assessment. So working with your food service provider or a cafe or your entire university to understand where your food is coming from. How many Aramark campuses are here? You want to put your hand up if you, okay. So I'll start off the conversation with, we got a call from someone from Aramark last week who was really exciting. He is their supply chain analysis manager, and over the past 3 years has been working on supply chains and understanding where they're coming from. And basically, he kept on getting these requests from University of Manitoba, from Capilano, from Carleton, of students saying, we want to know where our food is coming from. And he would have to go out and gather all this data and often didn't get a great response, and there was a lot of confusion. So over the past 2 years, with the continued student demand and the continued universities asking Aramark, the head office basically realized that this was a really important issue. And so Aramark head office has now sent out a letter of request to 30 of their top suppliers, so that's Maple Leaf, that's Weston Bread, that's I'm trying to think of other big brand like Tyrell Meats, to actually ask where their food is coming from and where it's being processed. So where it's being grown and where it's being processed, as well as if it has any other certifications. And so what that means for Aramark campuses is over the next year, anytime students ask for that information, it will be available from their district manager. So this is really cool because it's never happened before, and it means that it's actually changing the system. So this is something we're really excited about, and I just wanted, that sort of excited us all in the office enough to bring this up again as a place to do some work and a place where students' voices are making change, and we hope to continue that. So any questions on that anecdote?
What's this? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask, like, when do you think they would be able to get back to us for all the suppliers? Like, when do you think we can get our hands on that information?
Yeah, so they asked, the call out I think went out in May to their 30 suppliers, and they said that that 30 suppliers needed to identify their top products. So those suppliers right now are basically going and finding all that information themselves. So they're going to the pig farms, they're going to the processing factories to ask those. So it might take a while because we're really going down through all the trucks and factories and boats and wherever things are coming from to ask those questions. But within a year, all that information should be available.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And what's the name of the guy you were talking to, the supply management guy?
Yeah. So it's Mike Yarimorowicz, and I can send that to you.
Thank you.
In a follow-up. But he's a really, really amazing person who's been so wanting this to happen, and he basically said the voice of students and the voice of this project has actually been able to have him leverage his position to do so much more than he was ever supposed to. So a really exciting place, and I think that's why I sort of wanted to go through again the opportunities in the supply chain. Does that sound good going forward?
Yes.
Sounds great.
Ah, Chris is on. Hello, Chris.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties. My computer decided it was going to reboot then, so it's been a little bit of a comedy of errors, but it's working now. My question for this segment of the conversation, I'm wondering, you said the district manager is the person that we would talk to eventually. Mm-hmm. Does that mean for Carleton, is that someone in Toronto or in Ottawa or?
Sorry, so I said district manager, but I meant your actual account manager, so it would be David Van Dyke. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Cool.
Thanks for that clarification. Awesome. Okay. So basically, we're just finalizing our toolkit on purchasing assessments. But basically what that means is looking at where your food is where it's getting its food from. So it's a place to help identify where food's coming from, but also where there's major questions. And we hope to bring those questions forward as projects and places where both food service providers and suppliers and students can all work together to be able to unpack that. So I thought I'd just kind of give a little bit of a rundown of what purchasing baseline assessment could look like, and then we can kind of just open it up to discussion in terms of, what would you like to see out of a purchasing baseline and what challenges do you foresee? Any questions before we jump into that? Okay. So the first thing I think that's really, really important is to set a goal. So before beginning a purchasing baseline assessment or an audit, it's important to think about what you'd like to get out of this process. So this is something that you guys as CFSGs can decide. We want to know like an example would be, we want to know how much we actually know about local, sustainable, and just food products our campuses are purchasing. So the purchasing assessment will identify gaps in our knowledge and help our campus set targets to improve our food system in the future. So that could be sort of a goal that's created by the CFSG. It could be supported by the Students' Union. It could be supported by the food service manager. Yesterday I had an amazing opportunity to speak with Celia and Rebecca and their food service manager, who was really keen. She wants to figure this out. She believes that this will help advance the goals of their campus. So this is an opportunity to do that. So then another thing to do would be able to determine the scope, the priorities, and the process. So basically what this audit will look like is a whole lot of numbers. It will be, you know, all of the invoice of everything that your campus purchases. So it's really important to think through, what are your priorities? Do you want to focus on meats and vegetables and eggs and dairy to start, or do you want to get into things like granola bars and snacks and salad bar additions? So I think just understanding, you know, what are the different targets you want to reach, as well as what sort of things you want to keep an eye out for. So are you focusing only on local? Are you focusing on certifications? Do you want to, you know, have a special focus on things that are only grown within 100 kilometers, or are you going? Most food service providers use the local as provincial boundaries. So I think, you know, coming up with some of those scopes will be really important moving forward, as well as identifying who will be conducting the audit. So is it something that you're going to support your food service managers to do? Is it something that you'll be doing yourself? Or is it something that students in either a student group, internships, a grad student, or a group of applied student research students could be helping with? So then the next step, once you've determined your goal and determined your scope, would be the actual gathering of information. So this is something where you work with your food service provider or a cafe manager, for example, at Bridges, and look through the invoices. And you can sort of identify where there are gaps. So you could create a database, and every time where you just have no idea where things are coming from. So, you know, there could be a list of 100 Pepsi products, and you can put a question mark beside all of those. You know, that's when you can sort of unpack questions. Something interesting that could come up is if you see like 20 lines of fish and you don't know where any of them are coming from, chances are your fish distributor either isn't providing that information, or doesn't know that you want that information, or doesn't have that information. So an important aspect in you know, tracking where things are coming from and where you don't know things would be, who do you need to talk to figure out that information? And that's where people like distributors or suppliers, are any of those words new to folks? Any clarifications wanted there? Okay. So the distributors are basically the trucks that collect everything, and suppliers are the ones who are, they can sell directly, but they are more like the fish supplier or the meat supplier, so they have the actual products and can kind of push them forward. So yeah, so once you determine the gaps, that's when you can sort of pull up more questions. And that's something that we want to help support you guys on, and that, you know, put themselves perfectly in questions that you can ask your food service provider, in things that you can integrate into requests for proposals in the future of, you know, we actually want to see this much information, we want to know this much, here is our target for local, and here's our mechanism for tracking it. And then sort of analyzing that data of what you know, what you don't know, is a really interesting exercise. So that's sort of the big setting a goal, defining scope and process, gathering information, organizing it, analyzing it, and then integrating it into the other things that you're doing, like applied student research or meetings with your food service provider, or some of the events that you're planning, you know, fresh food and local in orientation week, that will really help to clarify where some of that food is coming from and find out, you know, where you can actually determine that. So this is all coming out in a guide in a much clearer, prettier format, but I just kind of wanted to put it out there that change is totally possible and it's happening, but there's still a lot of gaps in information, and something to help fill those gaps is just the continued questioning and the continued asking. And so it sort of comes back to that idea of branding things as natural. I think something we see in the Campus Food Systems Project is we don't want local or sustainable to be greenwashed or blended. We want it to have really strong branding in what is actually happening on campuses, and understanding that there probably are huge gaps at this point. So I hope that this is something that can advance whatever work that you guys are doing right now and not be an extra layer of demand, but for things like if you're working on applied student research, thinking through, are there some questions that students could answer? If you're working on events, how could this question, okay, thanks guys. Or if you're making connections with the new food service provider, how could that sort of come up, that this is something that you're interested in? And I think the last thing I want to say is an audit can sound like a really scary word, but what we kind of want this to be as like learning and growing together, acknowledging that, you know, the food system has been broken over the past 50, 60 years, so this is a way of trying to rebuild it and just gain that sense of transparency. So that is sort of one potential project, and that in itself, Rebecca is actually a full-time, will be working on this project and actually testing out the Real Food Calculator, which is based in the States, but is a really neat tool, and this is our first pilot project with them. We'll see how it goes, and then our hope is to bring it to Canada over the next year. So we're working with a group in the States called Real Food Challenge on that. But that's sort of her focus. So, but I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention because I think it's a really important part of what we do and a part of what we're advocating for. So yeah, that I think is it from me. I've diatribed for too long. So any thoughts or questions or confusions or ideas coming from gaining that information?
This is really great, Sarah. If I can just jump in here, it's Chris. I think there's so many opportunities to look at what universities are purchasing, and it's, for me, the part of the supply chain that you're talking about is really the distribution and the wholesale function. So you're going, you're tracing it back to the source. Is what I think of when we think of the purchasing baseline assessment. The other thing that universities are already doing for local Wednesdays and things, and like what Aramark is doing here, is that they have the percentage of a menu that's local, and so I'm wondering if there are other ways that we can sort of think about if there is information that we do come into the possession of, how are we using it, and like how then do we make people aware that this much of the menu is local, or are there special foods that are included that are local, because it's not mainstream enough yet, and it would be great to see it being even more mainstream.
Great point. Actually, David mentioned something that he wanted to do on that front with the percentages as well. Let him. Oh, you're muted right now, David.
So I think every month what we want to do with Bridges is have a little sign that says that this month how much percentage of local food is going to be brought into the cafe. logistically speaking, what we'll do to try and get an accurate number as possible is just speak to the head chef manager prior to every month and just ask him about his order, because they usually have to order everything about 2 weeks prior to the month, just to have everything ready. So then with that, we can just go down his list of suppliers and just do a relatively rough estimation, and just like maybe we can have the meal exchange office approve it as well, and they can have a look, and then we can both advertise as like this. Maybe in October 80% is local food, and in December it'll maybe drop down to maybe 65%, in January, so on. So it just shows the students that how much local is being made in the space.
Yeah. Oh, neat. Mm-hmm.
And just to hop on your point there, Chris, I think it's really interesting, the idea that, saying on local Wednesdays, this percentage is local, but the rest of the week, I mean, it's important to recognize, what that is, and often, percentages don't connect as well, and I'm hoping Sarah Jane's research with behavioral things over the summer might unpack a little bit more on that, but something I know that's been really successful at a lot of places is connecting what local means, so connecting it to a person, connecting it to land. And something that the chef at UBC does is whenever he can't get a product that's local, when they aren't able to procure a product that they normally do. So, for example, there was a frost really early on, and it killed a bunch of tomatoes. He posted a photo of that and just letting the students know, like, there won't be tomatoes this week, and this is why. And he actually received some pretty positive feedback. So he stuck to his values, but he was able to explain that challenge to individuals. So that's another way to be able to express, actually the supply chain, it's not perfect. So.
Oh, excellent.
Awesome. I'm wondering, Maggie or Jada, with some of the work that you guys are hoping to do with getting local food for either special days in the cafeteria or for orientation week, if who you're working with and if there's been challenges in actually securing that food will be local.
Oh yes, so we actually had the opportunity to chat together, which was so all of our ideas are probably going to be the same. But for me today, I just talked about we have like a USB that goes in every frosh kit, so I can make up like an information package about the CFSG, which will be available to any student who get the frosh kit. And then we've also been talking about having some kind of like you start off with like a plant when you come into frosh week, and then you start like a seedling, and then kind of watch that grow over the course of the year. And that's actually something they did in the frosh kits in the past, I found out today. So I don't think it would be a very big like transition for them to kind of go back to that, which is good. And then the other thing is like we have what they call alternative events, but they're moving away from that terminology now. But so for example, like normally there's a big dance, but it's pretty wild, so they have glow frisbee as well. So at an event like that where it's more generally like a healthier event, I guess, because you're doing like the physical activity of playing frisbee, something like that, having like local apples served, and kind of just giving a little bit of information on why, like, the importance of those local apples, and also it's like a great way to draw more people to those other events, or even creating another event like a garden party, which would also be really cool.
Awesome. Cool.
So, yeah, we discussed earlier, so we have similar ideas because we kind of just like blossomed from what we were talking about. But we're thinking of having a garden party as an alternative event to our dance. But one of the main challenges that we're going against is we're trying to get local food for O Week, and primarily O Week usually has barbecues. And the biggest blockade we've found is that for meat, the like cheap stuff you buy in Costco. That's not like you don't know where that's coming from, but like it's semi-cooked. Whereas like when you buy it from like local, it's not necessarily half-cooked meat. So they're worried about the regulations of cooking meat on campus. So they're more down to do like local veggie burgers and like trying to find affordable. But now we're just trying to like deconstruct like what are the meat laws of cooking meat on campus. So.
Wow, that I think is really, I mean, meat is one of the biggest challenges in the food system for getting local because of the inspection of the slaughterhouses. So I think if you unpack that a little bit more in terms of like what are the regulations on cooking it on campus would be really fascinating. Something that Chef Joshna does, which I think is really interesting, is she has waiver forms. So when the university, when it's Chartwell's where she works, and they can't be liable for local meats, for local products. She actually has waiver forms that she can sign off and say, like, I myself and the university will take personal responsibility because she knows the farmers personally. She's bought from them before. She knows the suppliers, so she's fully 100% sure that it's food safe. It's just that the corporation isn't able to buy it, but they do have these waiver forms that she can kind of sign off on and say, you know what, we're going to buy this no matter what, which I think is really interesting.
What's your position?
Sorry?
What's your position, sir?
She's director of food services.
Oh, okay.
But so sometimes they allow, like if the university or if the students' union has a waiver form, that would okay things, and you make sure that it's obviously food safe. I don't want to.
Yeah.
This is recorded. I don't want to be responsible for an E. coli breakout at Dell.
So alternatively, and if we can't get meat, we're thinking of doing this anyways, but have like local lettuce and tomatoes and like local toppings if we can't have like everything local. So we're trying to be like some part local, not necessarily like if we can't get it all, we're giving up. So we're still going.
Awesome. And is that pretty easy to buy? Are you guys buying that yourselves, or are you going through a supplier?
Right now we're in like the investigative stage, so we know like some like farmers that are affordable or they're like willing to donate something. So we're just trying to figure out which ones are the best ones, and we're creating in the lab with spreadsheet.
Awesome. One other thing I just learned recently that I think is really interesting that I'll just put out there is in contracts with farmers. Oh, Julie, you have to head out. Do you want to share? Is there anything that you guys want to share about your project?
Oh, sorry. Well, everything that you said like really speaks to me, at least. It's sort of the stages that we're going to go through here, and it would be awesome to keep connections if anyone else is going through a similar process with assessing where their food is coming from. It would be amazing to like communicate over email and yeah.
Awesome. Cool, and we can share updates from what's going on with the calculator and you guys.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, the one thought I just thought was really interesting that I recently learned is basically most suppliers take 90 days to pay their brokers or their suppliers. So if you get bread today, you won't have to pay for it for 90 days.
Oh, okay, cool.
But for like small farmers who are selling to a cafeteria, they would like payment as soon as possible because they're not a multinational corporation. They've got a small budget. So it's really, really important to specify and clarify if you're ever working with a food service provider or a regular supplier that you'll need to pay that person within, speak to the farmer, but it could be within 15 or 30 days or upfront. So that's just a difference in the corporate food system that allows for a lot more delay, which is a really important thing to clarify.
Cool.
Awesome. Jamie, how is all of that sitting with you? I know it's new information, second day on. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, someone came to my door, so I'm like, I gotta.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much. Are there any, I'd just be interested to do a bit of a go around before we check out of something that you, like, imagine you go up to purchase something on campus. What's some information that would be really helpful for you to know or think about when you're or at the grocery store that would help you make a food choice?
I'm gonna go first. I would like to see. So all the in Ontario they have those foodland stamps, and a lot of them and a lot of farmers nowadays when you buy berries or when you buy tomatoes, they put them in prepackaged boxes or in those little baskets, and they even tell you exactly where the farm is or where or where their farm's head office is, and that generally means that the farm will be relatively close because most of them are just independent farmers. Yeah, so that's I think when you're also doing audits at your campuses, that those are good things to look at. Just looking at the box, yeah, it'll pretty much have. If not, it'll have the large distributor on it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
I think for me, something that would be really useful, and I think for the general population too, it would be having something that kind of tells you what kind of questions to ask when you don't even know you should be asking those questions. 'Cause, like I went we did like a supermarket tour for one of my certificate courses, and we found out we found out that corn is injected with, or sorry, chicken is injected with corn, and like how do you even know to ask that kind of thing when it's just so absurd that you would never even think of that. So I think having like some kind of guide to say like, okay, these are the type of questions you should be asking about your food, because like even me as someone who knows about food systems, like I would never know to ask anything like that. So
Yeah. Awesome.
I thought of something else this morning. This is Chris. There are all sorts of nutritional labelings that exist on foods, and so some of the organizations, Canada's kind of been a leader in this area to get nutritional labels on the back of food so you can tell exactly how much sugar, how much salt, all of the major macronutrients are in a given food product. So maybe part of the audit could have to do with nutrition in some way. Not that it necessarily is, like, I mean, this is primarily a local food audit, but I'm wondering if there are any issues that might be lumped in together, or just like thinking of, oh, well, the university is, and in fact, I know someone here at Carleton who's already doing that, or who's been hired on as a nutritionist over the summer to start looking at other things, but yeah.
Chris, yeah, that's a really interesting point, and it actually that came out during our chat with Aramark in terms of looking at the food purchases, because the only foods that actually were local were ones that were unprocessed products, or that they knew were local, right? And so all of the PepsiCo, all of the chips, all of the, like, pretty much everything, and I'll show you really quickly. There was no information. If you guys can look at my screen, there was no information on the bacon, on the chunks ahoy, the cookies, the cereals, the cheddar, and only did things come in when it was like cheese, or this is where they're at so far. So they've got a long way to go. Ketchup, and we're down here. We've got a few with some of the grains. So I think, you know, actual foods that are unprocessed versus not processed has a big aspect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other thoughts?
Actually, when I was younger, my parents always had Adbuster subscriptions, so I used to read them when I was younger, and I remember reading this article about Hannaford guides for consumers, and it's basically like a non-biased rating system of 3 stars, and it like it would rate like companies like how nutritious the food actually was, and it was really, I just remember reading it when I was younger, and I just found it again online, but just like how like things that you think are really nutritious actually aren't, and it tended to be like the genetically modified products, or like the ones that are basically corn, were not nutritious at all. And it was just like a really like interesting thing to read. Like, hey, like B8 got like no stars because of the how much salt was in it. So I just thought it was like just like so interesting to read that, and it ended up like demonstrating that the ingredients that are the most simple and are located in like closer proximity and having more stars and more nutrition. It's just kind of interesting. So I wish they actually had that, and unfortunately the system got knocked down when corporations started seeing that people actually started reading it, and they like influenced it and kind of wrecked it. But I thought it was a great idea.
Totally. Awesome. Any other thoughts?
I wouldn't mind knowing, especially with the meat products, how those animals were treated before it got processed, and just to make sure that they were treated in like a humane fashion. Just because they have the most recent one is the milk farms, or how the cows were treated. So I'm like, never buy them from there again. So that would be good to know.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. One thing I always really like to see is who, if I'm buying something processed, is who made it, to be able to chat with them a little bit and like speak to the chef, which I think is at the dining hall at McGill. I was lucky enough to be able to connect in with the chefs who made it and actually ask what was in it. So that was always really helpful. So it's exactly the hour. So I guess thank you guys all for taking the time in the middle of the day to come together. I hope it was a nourishing conversation, and I think the big takeaway is that the student movement is actually making some really tangible changes, and that I really encourage all of you to continue asking questions. And if you have any thoughts or resources or things that are coming up, please share them out, because that'll really just enhance all of our learning. So the only little bit of housekeeping left was Jada asked if we need to finalize dates for VIA by end of day, and the dates can be a little bit flexible. We just need to know the types of trips that you're taking so that we can order them, and I will pass that on to other coordinators so everyone has it on. Great. Okay. Thanks, guys, so much, and I will be sending around the Purchasing Baseline Toolkit in the future, as well as the infographic, and use them as tools. Not a lot of pressure to use them, but would love your thoughts and feedback on them. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Great to see everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.